Some days it's shit. Some days it's really shit. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. As always, I thought today we'd do something that people traditionally shy away from, but actually there's a real value to that, and it's mentors. What are the value of a good mentor? What does a good one look like? But at the same time, I thought I'd talk about what does good leadership look like, because a lot of the best leaders have been my best mentors, based on actually what you really want. Is someone that's going to drive and challenge your objectives and what the reason for the engagement is. So yeah, we're going to talk about great leadership and what it looks like and the qualities, because we can all learn to be a leader. It's typically quite a natural thing, but actually leaders can inhibit learned behaviours if they spot what good leaders look like, and actually then the value of mentorship, because in most workplaces we all know a good leader and they're typically a very good mentor, and a lot of entrepreneurs are great mentors because they can give you the benefit of their experience. So I thought we'd dovetail the two together and talk about what, in my opinion, great leadership looks like, and actually how mentorship can be super valuable alongside great leaders. So the 6 things that I have kind of narrowed down to what I believe a great leader looks like. See if you agree. But I think if I look at, I've met many great leaders, I've also met a number of bad leaders, but if I think about the best ones, the ones that I respect, the ones that I've learnt the most from, and you don't have to like every person that you've worked for, but actually you learn a hell of a lot from a great leader, particularly as you start to then become a leader yourself.
Leadership is not about being in charge, it's about taking care of those in your charge. The closest thing to leadership is being a parent. Yes, you have all the authority, yes, you have all the power, but you're responsible for bringing up others around you, helping them build their confidence and see that they can achieve more than you.
So here are the 6 things that I found to be the most relevant skill sets for a great leader that seem to cut across all criteria. Clarity of vision and direction. They're very clear about the direction that they want to go in. They have clarity during the moments of panic, or where you can't quite disseminate the direction that you want to go to as a business. The best leaders find true clarity in those moments, and actually they can give real direction to those around them. And even if they're not necessarily sure the direction they're pumping you in is correct, their confidence in the way they deliver that message actually moves the dial forward and people in a direction, and actually the answers start to become more obvious. So clarity of vision and direction is the first thing that came to mind when I thought about the great leaders. They're unmoved from their position if they know it to be right. Number 2, an ability to listen.
Nelson Mandela is important because everyone thought he was great. And he was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he was asked by a journalist, how did you learn to be a great leader? And he said, when I was younger, I remember going to tribal meetings with my father, and I remember 2 things. 1, they always sat in a circle, and 2, my father was always the last to speak. And if you think about how we conduct meetings so often, we walk in and say, okay guys, here's the problem, here's what I think we should do, but I'm interested in what you have to say, let's go around the room. It's too late. You've biased the room, or people don't feel heard. And the strength it takes to not say anything and not even give away what your ideas are, and let people contribute. Not only do they feel heard, but you actually get the benefit of everything they have to say.
I don't think you can say enough about how important the ability to listen is, because you're not always right as a leader. So taking on board other people's views, their feedback, and then, that's point number 1, direction, clarity. But you can only truly have clarity if you can listen. Number 3, a level of humility, or the ability to admit when they don't know or are unsure. Just because you're the leader doesn't mean you have to have the answers to every single question. The greatest leaders I know, the best people I've ever worked for, knew what they knew and didn't know what they didn't know. And when they didn't know, they'd go to the people who they believed to be the experts. They'd apply the pressure on them to say, look, I'll make the big calls, I'll sign off the check, whatever comes of the ultimate consequence of that decision. But you're the expert. This is your time to shine. This is me looking to you. I do not know. Or equally in a team meeting when we're all debating something and the answer's not necessarily clear, being able to sit at the head of the table and say, I don't know, guys, we're going to have to make a call on this jointly. Or if you can present your best cases, then I'll make the decision off the back of the evidence presented. But I think it's such an important quality of a leader to admit when you don't know. Number 4, and none of these are in particular order of importance, surround yourself with good leaders. The best leaders I've ever met surround themselves with people that I hugely respect or admire. And I think I'll probably speak for anyone who's watching this video. If you imagine the best leaders you've ever had, the greatest people that you've ever worked with or for, the people they surround themselves in a professional environment and a personal environment, if you know them, always surround themselves with brilliant people. The hardest working, the most intelligent, the most diligent are the ones that are fully committed. Great leaders inspire people to go with them on the journey and typically follow them from job to job, in my experience. Number 5, the commercials. Sharp as a knife. There are no flies on that person. They understand how they drive the profitability and the commerciality of their business. Doesn't mean they have to be a trained accountant. Doesn't mean they have to have been a sales director. But they understand the sharp end of the point. They understand what is driving the profitability of that company. They can take a profit and loss and not just read it. The greatest leaders interpret a profit and loss. They deliver actions off the back of receiving that information that impacts the numbers. Those inanimate objects on a piece of paper, they react to decisions and behaviours. And the best leaders recognise that, and they put plays into action that influence those numbers for the good. So you've got to be commercially sharp. You really have to hone those skills as a leader. If you're going to make it in business, you can engage your employees, all the things that I've talked about in these videos. But if your companies don't make money, at the end of the day, that's the ultimate scorecard. You can be the greatest person, a wonderful leader, you can inspire the troops. But if you don't know your numbers, you will get found out. Number 6, they're the hardest working person in the room. Even as people get to the latter stages in their career that I've met that are great leaders, they still work as hard as they did on the first day they got the job. There is an inbuilt desire, particularly in the best entrepreneurs and the best leaders. They treat the business as if it was their own. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between it being their company and somebody else's. First in, last out. And I've said it in so many other videos. The only thing you can truly control in a workplace is how hard you work. And the best leaders do not value hours worked. It just goes with part of the job. When they can take that time off, they absolutely should. A lot of them can't, but they should. But a scorecard of your success is not your hours. Your hours is just something that is required to get the job done. And the best leaders look at it as a job getting done, not a number of hours worked. So that's always been number 6. They've always been the hardest working person. And as I say, don't confuse that with the most hours worked. They get every ounce of them and their people out of what they have got. They work hard, they work diligently, and they work smartly. So they're my 6 key pointers for what great leadership looks like. But actually it really links in well to what a good mentor looks like.
Occasionally I'll get a phone call from somebody that says, hey Simon, will you be my mentor? And my answer is only if you'll be mine.
Because if we're coming at this, I'm very much coming at this from the point of view of professional mentoring and relationship building, not life coaching. Life coaching is a very different thing, much more about the soft skills, finding kind of peace and contentment. Those of you that are looking or know someone that's a mentor, I think it's a really heavily underutilised thing that's available to all of us. You shouldn't necessarily confuse mentorship, coaching, consultancy with paid all the time. Absolutely. As I say, someone who's done a fair amount of consultancy work myself, clearly I'm biased. I see the value in it. I've got the results that back that up. However, never underestimate the value of picking up the phone to someone you love, you like, you respect. Because mentoring and coaching is actually about friendship, ultimately. You can pretend it isn't because it's in a professional environment, but it's actually about establishing a relationship with someone that you trust. And the big mistake people tend to make is they view themselves as subservient. The mentor is up here. They are the godlike character that's going to impart all their wisdom on you, and you will flourish because of that. Actually, the best mentoring relationships can be peer-to-peer. We all have our skills, we all have our weaknesses, and the best relationships are where they're complementary. What one is weak at, the other is good at. What one's business is, the other one's isn't. I think it's being brave enough to pick up the phone to someone you like, someone you respect, someone you've worked with whose views and values you agreed with and you shared. The first thing everybody should seriously consider is peer-to-peer mentoring. Someone you know, someone you respect, someone who's been there and done it, and actually you'll help each other for the love of it, for the creation of that relationship. There might not be someone that you then go on to have a personal friendship with, be a scenario, but there's 3 or 4 people that I get on super well with, and our relationship is totally forged out of a professional respect for one another. And in some of their darkest moments, they've rang me. They've been through some horrendously tough times, some real distressing moments in their businesses, and they rang me just for some advice. Likewise, when I've had some difficult moments, I've just gone to them for, what do you think? And you don't even realise it, but that is mentoring, because quite a lot of us find ourselves, our best friends, we're kind of, as I view it, life partners. Those friendships will last a lifetime. And sometimes a work conversation does feel appropriate, sometimes it doesn't. But actually, sometimes your careers can be so poles apart, it's very difficult to have that relationship because you haven't walked in the other one's shoes. So you can listen and you can support them as the friend, but you can't give them really good salient advice that's totally transferable to what they're doing. So in terms of mentoring, I think they're the big things that I would talk to you all about, in the sense of, don't assume that they are the greater being and you are the lesser being, which I think is what puts a lot of people off asking.
Mentor relationships aren't mentor-mentee. It's not just teacher-student, but it's rather mentor-mentor.
You can have a mutually beneficial relationship, a bit like AA. You go and you share your deepest secrets. I've never been to a meeting, but what I imagine it looks like, where you tell each other the truth. You're talking about the things that have gone wrong. You're talking about your fears. You're talking about the problems you're worried about, whether you or your business can overcome them. And actually, we've all been there. Business is not a perfect science. Management is not a perfect science. And a lot of us have been there, done it, got the t-shirt and got the experience, but not of everything. So keep the pool wide. Take advice from anyone you can. But you might find that even if that advice isn't directly applicable, it may trigger the thought process that takes you on the next step of the journey towards what your solution is. So I cannot talk highly enough of kind of what I call the peer-to-peer mentoring. In any business, I personally think employers should encourage it. They should almost try and forge those relationships for you if they can, but that's not always possible. No one wants something forced upon them. But if you work with someone that you hugely respect, you don't even have to pick up the phone like it's some awkward date and say, will you be my mentor?
Come around mine tonight, play Pro Evo.
Depends. Will your friend, the footballer, be there?
Oh, friend, football friend. Oh, best friends forever and ever.
Oh, friend!
Create the relationship, have the conversations, learn from each other, take on board the good bits and avoid the bad bits of what you hear. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So I thought now I'd back this up with some of the best examples of leaders that I've ever worked with and people who I still to this day would go to if I had a problem. And some of them I haven't talked to for a couple of years, but they had such a profound impact on me that I'd go to them instantly if I felt that I needed something. So one of the guys used to run Compass Group UK, or the Levy restaurant side of it, and he was my boss's boss. And I ended up forging quite a close personal relationship with him, and he taught me the value of people. So he used to call me Haircut. I used to have long hair. And when I, as I've talked about in other parts of videos, when I lost my mum and then I went in hospital for 3 or 4 months to have surgery, and my daughter was born in the middle of that melting pot of a shitstorm. On my first day back to work, my boss, who had been super supportive as well, by the way, but the kind of ultimate guy, the MD, CEO character, he was there the first day I came back, and it taught me so much about the humility of a great manager. And he sits me down and says, "Haircut, how you doing?" Which first off blew me away, that someone who's running something that's turning over, I think may even have been circa £1 billion in turnover. It's certainly very high, hundreds of millions. To take the time to even care, how are you doing? And this conversation was only 5 minutes, but you can tell 7, 8 years later the impact it's had on me. Are you ready to come back? I think I am, but I won't know. I know I don't want to be at home anymore. I know I'm recovered from the surgery. And I'm not over the heartache of going from the birthing unit to my own mother's funeral, but there is no quick fix to that. It's the best answer I can give you. Find your feet. Work for a week, see how you feel. If you need a year off, because I think at this point I'd had maybe 4 months. If you need a year off, we'll still be here to support you. And I was absolutely blown away by this. And then the bit that took it over the top for me was he then said, and there's private healthcare, and there's a wage review. But those conversations will be handled in detail by somebody else. But I want you to know we're here. You've done outstanding work for us, and it's our job to stand by you. Such a simple conversation, but no one can tell me that's not how you handle your people. Albeit I had been one of the high performers, and I had won things like CEO awards, but none of it was required. Absolutely no part of that conversation was required. He did not need to come and see me. He did not need to have that conversation. Maybe he was there anyway. Just happened to be my first day back because I was in a fairly high profile site. None of that actually matters though, because the moment he knew I was there, he wanted the conversation, and he had that conversation with me. And it stayed with me forever. I already valued people insanely highly, their engagement, their happiness, and how you motivate them. But for a guy who was so dynamic, so powerful, so bullshit, so upfront, to show that softer side that I had an inkling was there, and he uses it in the right way, he absolutely demonstrated to me what a fantastic leader of people looked like. But this guy, to talk about the great leaderships, I think he ticked all 6 of the things that I talk about. He was probably the sharpest person I've ever met commercially. And he had this ability. I remember in one particular meeting, probably won't thank me for saying this, and it was all in good jest, one of the other managers hadn't quite hit what they were supposed to, and he rabbit punched them in the groin. He totally broke the mood up in the room because it was tense, because he was a fierce leader, and actually you just didn't want to let him down. So if your numbers weren't on point, particularly those of us running multi-million pound businesses, like in my case, it wasn't the done thing to miss your number, and it wasn't well received. But actually his ability to break up the room, the tension, it was very clear he wouldn't tolerate it, but he cut through it. A silly little rabbit punch in the groin might sound wholly unprofessional in a work environment, but when your people buy into you, when your people get your culture, he knows the boundaries of what is right and what is wrong. And I think I had some other moments later in my career with some of the very tough sites that I worked with, and he was absolutely the person that I went to, and he supported me unequivocally. I think you can tell in the way I talk about him and revere him, I class him as an absolutely outstanding leader. So this example I give you is actually then about mentoring. And these relationships I'm talking about, they're not paid, but I'm going to talk about people who I view as being mentors for them. And they are to me, but we've never talked about it. There's people who I've worked with who are general managers of businesses today. There's a guy who I know who runs his own company. And we check in. That's how I'd describe it. We check in. How are you getting on? And weirdly, once that conversation starts, we both feel compelled in these 2 or 3 relationships I'm referencing to tell each other the unbridled truth. Yeah, it starts off, yeah, things right, you know, it is busy, kids, family, life, business, but I'm doing okay. The real question is, but how are you really doing? Are things okay? And as I say, one of them went through a really challenging time in his company, really distressing. And we then started talking every day. I didn't need any money, didn't need any thanks. But you care about these people. And particularly if you have a skill set that can help a person, why wouldn't you do them that favour? And likewise, when I've had some challenges outside of work, one of the people who I've helped quite a lot in their career, I found myself drawn to them. Not because I needed the personal advice, but I did need that someone to go, God, I'm going through this stuff, but how do I keep the train on the track professionally? Because I've got big businesses that I'm running, hundreds of people working for me, but I've got all this going on. You've been through some stuff. What did it look like for you? Because we've all been there. That's what real life is. It's not these sanitised, yeah, things are great, maybe could have been slightly better. Some days it's shit. Some days it's really shit, or it's really hard. And that's why the mentor relationship, and maybe mentoring isn't the word that represents that, but it's the business friendship that you're looking for, because your personal friendships, they mean the world to you. And I'm not discounting the relationships I have, but they are your day-to-day crutches. But actually, if they're not in similar fields or whatever it might be, sometimes you want that bit of advice from someone who doesn't know you that well. That person who it's almost like the ultimate freedom, the kind of AA analogy I used earlier in the video. I can literally say anything to this person because I don't see them on a day-to-day basis. They're not going to judge me. And not that your closest friends would judge you, but actually it's so much easier to tell each other the truth when you know each other, but there's a degree of stranger to the relationship, because actually you're just there purely and simply to help each other. And when the times get tough, you're there for them, and equally they're there for you. Simple thing to talk about, actually, but something that I suppose most of us will overlook. The quid pro quo is there's something in it for both of you equally. So never be afraid to pick up that phone and have that honest conversation, and equally encourage that conversation back at you. Be there for one another, because actually the best things come out of the conversations and the relationships that you would least expect. So that's it for today. Leadership and mentoring and the dovetailing relationship that I feel that they have in the best workplaces and the best relationships. Hopefully it's useful. As always, stay safe. Please do like, please do subscribe, and I will see you next time.